Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Hello and welcome back to the Healthy Living Podcast. I am your host, Joe Grumbine, and today I have back with me a very special guest. His name's Richard Mccuen, and I have known Richard now for, I think it's been 5 or 6 years at least. And, Richard came to me as one of the representatives with my natural product company, Willow Creek Springs, as one of my representatives. And he was able to experience some of the values of our products. But Richard and I have become friends over the years. And, Richard is a retired military man. He's a retired law enforcement man. And he's had a life that's just been full of difficulties, was severely injured as a law enforcement officer. And he's been going through this journey of recovery ever since. But not just is he working his own shit out, but he's working it out in a way that has helped many people. And when I met him, he was talking about a program that he had developed called Biohack 40. And he told me about, his efforts in his own recovery. And anybody who listens to this podcast knows that for me, you can tell me anything you want. I'll take it on your word. But when you show me what you're doing for yourself, now that's where I start putting weight into people's actions. I say, words present the possibility. When I tell you something, it's what could happen, but actions show you the truth. Actions show you what did happen, and you cannot take or you can't add anything to or take away from something that happened, but you can add and take away from things that you say. So that's the big difference. So we're here talking words, but we're talking words about actions that have happened. So when I'm sharing you my experience with Richard, these are things that actually happened, and I'm sharing with you the way I perceived them. And I think it's important as we're discussing information and where we get it and the value of listening to this and not that, I would always say if you see somebody that has personally gone through something, that is valuable beyond any book you could read, because you're now looking at the actions that affected that person's life and you can learn from it without having to go through it yourself. And so I saw his program, and I'm going through my own health issues, as you may know. And I said to myself, and this was before I was diagnosed, I was like, well, I got this issue and I want to get through it. So let's go with it. And I went with Richard through his program. That took me from wherever I started, I don't remember even the number, up to 1,000 push-ups in a single day. And I met with him regular. He has done, I don't know, a dozen or so episodes already going through this Biohack 40 program and some of the principles of it. But it's really about picking a starting point and picking a challenge and then just working at it every day and adding a little more effort, a little more effort, a little more effort until you accomplish this completely unsolvable problem. And I did it. I got to 1,000 push-ups in a day. Now I'm back on a different program, and I'm doing a 500 program right now. And that's when I do push-ups, I do 500 every day that I do them. I don't do them every day, but when I do them, I do 500. Lucky, stop. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on. No, 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 no. We're not doing that. Come on, come on. Come on. No, we're not. We're not doing that. Sorry, I got another little dog that just loves to go and torment the husky. She thinks she's a wolf. Anyway, so Richard has got this amazing story. And then through it all, he got upended and he was in Fresno area and had to move on a moment's notice. And I remember when this happened, and it was just like, life throws you this twist, and all of a sudden you got to move. What a drag, right? I mean, I remember when you hit me up, you're like, I got to move. And but you were kind of prepared and you had already sort of, considered that as something like that could happen one day, and you took it and made it as difficult of a situation as it was. You turned it into the best thing you could. So you had a mom who was up in years and was going through, some health issues. And so you were able to move over there to Georgia and be with her. And I thought that was really great because you literally were able to spend the last few months of your mom's life with her. And I thought that was what a gift that was. And of course, that brought its own challenges. So shortly after she passes, of course, your family, and I put in quotes because everybody's family is in quotes in my eyes. Um, you ran into some challenges with all that, and that's fairly common. But man, what a drag! And going through the grief and the loss, and then you end up sort of bopping around, traveling around, and talking to different people. You were connected with the shop in Georgia for a little while, and just for whatever reason, things didn't quite take good root there. Then you meet a lovely lady in North Carolina, and next thing you know, you settled in, and man, what a blessing. Then you find out your shoulder's been torn apart and put together all wrong, and now you're in this total world of hurt. Your throat's closed off, you can't breathe, you can't eat, and you go to the VA, they're going to schedule a surgery for you, everything's on point. Next thing you know, they lost your file, and all of these things happening. I just hit tip top of the bullet points. Welcome back, Richard. I'm so glad to that you can talk again.
Yes, it's been quite a battle just to on a psychological level, some of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis that, we have no mindset, behind, and one of those things is breathing, it's some we can tend to take for granted, unless you're reminded of it. And,
Right,
the thing that I think that has pretty much kept me in pretty good health all along has been just on frequency.
ah,
And I think that's the best message for anything. One of the things that always resonated with me when I grew up, my dad said to me, is like, knowledge is never let someone in. Don't let somebody in unless you invite them.
okay,
So then that could be, into your house. It could be into your, I didn't really understand that until my later years, and that's within your own space. And,
right.
you
Yeah,
know,
that's your inner circle in your
yeah,
head. Yeah, all
in your
that.
head. And I
Right,
didn't understand that until I had real issues to deal with that it resonated. And I had to drop myself to a different level to understand that I was, you know, other than where I was comfortable.
right,
And that taught me, frequency. And once I was able to calm myself to be able to say, okay, you know, you're doing everything everybody else is wanting you to do. You're going
yeah,
to the doctor. You're keeping your appointments, but
right,
you're still being a brick wall. You're you know 2 months go by, you're still waiting. Well, that's 2 months. I'm still not being able to breathe.
right. Yeah,
Right.
let's stop there for a second because this is really important. People don't realize that, I talk a lot about the healthcare system and how dysfunctional it is, and what people don't think about it maybe or realize is that when you go to a doctor, it's because you're hurt, it's because you're suffering, you're experiencing difficulty breathing, moving, functioning in some way, and you're going there to find some relief right now. And when you go to a doctor and they look at you and say, okay, well, you got to go talk to this other doctor, go make an appointment. It'll be a couple of weeks. You go a couple of weeks of suffering. And that's why people get caught up into these quick fix medicines, because while they're suffering, the doctor will say, well, here's a little something to ease your symptoms. And then you jump right into that because you're suffering. And if you can't swallow and the doctor gives you some medicine that helps you swallow, well, shit, most people will take it, regardless of what other complications it sends. And so I think you sent a spotlight on something that I think people need to realize, that remember, when you're having an opinion about you should do this or you should do that or you shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that, take a second, maybe put yourself in the other person's shoes and realize that they're probably suffering in a way that affects their decision making and affects their values and their priorities. And it's really important to keep that in mind, because sometimes people make decisions that you're like, I don't know why you did that. I would have done this. And you're like, yeah, but you're not hurting the way this person's hurting. So I just throw that in for a second.
And that's the truth. And the best way I could really subconsciously explain it is, say you know, we've all broken a bone before, you know, as the ones that haven't, you know, can pay
Some more
attention.
than others.
Yeah, some more than others. But when you do break your bone, you go to the doctor, you know. Oh,
Yeah,
the doctor tells you, you know, like, this is just straight understanding. Is
right.
the doctor's going to ask you, oh, what brings you in? Oh, I broke my leg. I fell off my bike and I heard my bone go.
Yeah. Now it's sticking
Okay,
out of my
yeah,
leg.
it's just sticking out of my leg, doc. Can't you see that shit? So he does an X-ray and he says, yeah, your bone is broke. So we're gonna splint it. We're gonna put it in a cast. And I'm gonna give you this prescription for mild pain, you know, like ibuprofen or whatever, to help with
Right.
inflammation and everything. And I'll see you in 6 weeks. So you go home, and at 6 weeks, you're not doing anything. But what we don't realize is we're the ones that are fixing ourselves.
Exactly.
The doctor we went because we broke the leg didn't do anything but put it in a cast.
That's it.
Our own body did the work in healing. We just needed to give it that respect.
100%. I think that's
So
so
if we
important for
can
people to
start
realize.
respecting ourselves a little bit more instead of trusting a doctor, we need to understand why we go to a doctor and what their implications are that aren't going to align with what we need.
And that's so
So,
important, because remember, like you just said, your body is the thing that is healing yourself. Like
yeah,
whenever you go to a doctor for, it doesn't really matter. You go to a doctor for assurance of what the problem is more than anything, because a doctor has learned how to spot certain kinds of problems that maybe you don't know about. So
right.
that's a great reason to go to a doctor. Let's figure out what's wrong with me. But then after that, a doctor can do tests to help solve those problems. So whether it's
Yep.
x-rays or that kind of stuff, they have access to that sort of testing. All right, there's a value to that. But after that, then what can a doctor really do? And you think to yourself, okay, well, I broke my bone. The doctor's going to look at it, figure out what kind of a break it is, what the best thing to do for it is. And then, really, the best thing a doctor can generally do for a broken bone is just put it in a place for it to heal. And sometimes they got to put screws in it so it stays in its place. Sometimes they just put it back where it wants to go, like a puzzle. Sometimes they wrap it up in a hard cast, a soft cast, some wrapping of some kind to immobilize it. But once they're done, your body does all of the work. Your
Yeah,
doctor doesn't heal your bone.
and that's like how I explained it to my girl, because she didn't understand, you know, I am going to a doctor, they're delaying things, but I'm getting better.
Right,
So she's like, how's that? And I'm just, I'm writing my own prescription. You know, I'm
yes,
listening to my body. You know,
right.
it's like we need to listen to ourselves. You know, it's that gut feeling, man, I really don't feel good, or I really don't think we should go that way. Well, there's a
Right.
reason, you know, that's resonating. And oftentimes we override that because we think we're the ones that are in control, you know?
Oh, that's huge. That intuitive approach. I'm spending a lot of time. I've actually done a few episodes about my journey with, overcoming cancer and the things I'm dealing with, but it comes down to, well, everybody tells you something different.
Yeah.
And, wherever I go, I got somebody going, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I heard about what you're doing. Here's what you need to do." And it's a different thing than everybody else said. And at the end of the day, it's your problem. And so at the end of the day, your body knows the answer and you have to spend time. And, that's what God is all about is connecting you to the answer. So, you talk about things like frequency and resonance and, even like when somebody tells you, "Hey man, tone it down." Well, what are they saying? Tone it down. Tone. What
Right.
is tone? Tone
Lower your frequency.
or lower your frequency 100%. Turn your volume down and your tone. Those are two. That is like one of the most powerful commands that somebody could give, and you people don't even. It just blows right through us.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, whatever, and you just back off a little bit. But that is really what we're doing in everything in all of life, right?
Yes, and that's what you said earlier is like, it should be the like example of what you're setting, not what you've been through.
Right.
And I think that's where I think it's my fault of why, I've been called, you're not a doctor or blah 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 and everything else, but like everything I've posted on everything I went through has really been some type of program,
Yeah.
and to see me now versus to what, where I was,
Right.
it's like not it didn't really resonate because the knowing wasn't involved,
Right.
and I think that's where the 1,000 push-up program and everything, it really got consolidated to a balance to where, everyone can resonate or everyone can participate because the biohack 40, just 40 movements, they're basically doing that in a push-up. A lot of people get trapped in the mindset of the movement as what
Right.
I'm doing I'm pushing my body up and down instead
Yeah.
of what it produces and why.
Right.
So, like Karate Kid, he wanted to learn to defend himself because, he's tired of getting beat up. So
Right.
he learned how to wax cars and paint fences and shit.
Exactly. All these things that seem
He's like,
unrelated.
I'm freaking done. You're not teaching me nothing. And then
Right.
God showed him, like, look, he threw a punch and he blocked
Right.
it,
Yeah.
shot. It's the understanding, of the right frequency. And
Right.
we tune to, we're so tied up in fast food and all frequencies around us to lower or disrupt our original frequency.
Well, let's just look at the environmental factors that affect us and what people are getting themselves caught into. So most people live in the urban environment, so they're getting hit with lights, noises, sirens, aggression, hostility, anger, frustration. That's all around you in the city because that's all there is in this. I mean, not all, that's not the only thing there is. There's also love and beauty and kindness, but there's a lot of this other stuff that's just everywhere. You look and you see graffiti on the walls, dirt in the streets. You're breathing
Frequency.
microplastics and
Yep.
smoke.
Yep.
There's this constant chatter of sounds, all these things, these crazy noises. And then you got this little box that everybody's staring at that's sending you these little short messages with flashing lights all day long. Do this, do that, like this, like that, don't like this, asking you questions nonstop. Hey, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want this? And that's what the environment that most people are in. And you think about that and you say, well, what about that is healthy? Right? About any of it. Then that's not even getting into the food and the water supply. And like you're talking about, people live on fast food. People like, a few months ago, I changed my diet dramatically. Now I go to the grocery store and I'm like, I can only eat 6 things. Like there's
Yeah,
go to the
right.
grocery store and
Yeah.
there's no food in there. It's like, what the hell is this stuff? It's all I tell you pretty much if it's in a plastic wrapper, it's probably not much food. I mean, there are exceptions to that, but for the most part, everything's prepackaged. It's got full of chemicals and preservatives and chaos. And you think to yourself, well, what's that, right? Where do you find health? Then I look at your background here, and you've got a tapestry that looks like a beautiful forest behind you, and you say to yourself, "Wow, that's really cool," and it feels good. It has a different energy, a different feel, getting into that frequency.
There's a trail right here and everything.
Yeah, exactly. And it encouraged you, hey, let's find out what's on the other side of that. Let's go through and discover and explore and these are all healthy things. And when you go outside and you start getting into the earth and the soil, you start finding real food. And maybe you explore some of that. You go out into the plants and you start breathing some air that's not full of smoke and plastic stuff. Uh, it's a whole different world. This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.